A Tennessee woman is in the ICU trying to recover from horrific wounds that she says were inflicted on her by her husband in front of their children. We're going over the latest details in this awful case with Christine Grillo, a former prosecutor with experience in domestic violence cases. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Tessa Mowel's mother says she was supposed to bring her children to meet up with their aunt and their grandma on Monday night. But instead, Tessa ended up in the hospital fighting for her life. According to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and Dixon, Tennessee Police Department, 28-year-old Zachary Mowel is charged with attempted first-degree murder, aggravated arson, aggravated assault, and domestic assault. He's behind bars on a $765,000 bond because Tessa's mother, Tina, told local news outlet WSMV that Tessa told her, "Mama, he tried to kill me. He was leaving me to die." Investigators say Tessa and Zachary were inside their Dixon home when Zachary allegedly grabbed Tessa's arm and started stabbing her. He then repeatedly doused her in gasoline, loaded the kids into the truck, and set the home on fire, their children. Tessa told her mom that her oldest son, just 8 years old, tried to call 911, but Zachary wouldn't let him do it. Fortunately and miraculously, two people in the area, picking up a Facebook marketplace item of all things, saw the smoke. They actually rushed into the home to put out the fire. Medics found Tessa with the knife still sticking out of her body. It appears she had to drag herself to the back door and collapsed. It's unimaginable to think about, and have to highlight the heroic actions of these people. It's unbelievable. Now, Zachary actually returned to the home, the crime scene, and he was arrested because, according to court documents, he walked up to one of the officers and said, "I did it. It was me." Tessa, she remains hospitalized. She's reportedly paralyzed from the waist down, has third-degree burns. There's a GoFundMe page that was set up to cover the hospital costs. Tori Trotter, Tessa's twin sister, wrote on the page, she has 9 stab wounds. All her ribs are broken, collapsed lung. Her entire right leg has severe third-degree burns, and she's also paralyzed from the waist down. Tessa is strong, but she has a long road to recovery and therapy. Tessa is the strongest person I know, and her boys did not deserve this torture. She also noted that the 2 boys are safe with her and her husband. Tori told local media outlet WKRN that Zachary had been emotionally abusive toward Tessa, but never physically was abusive as far as she knew. It appears that Tessa may have gotten in touch with a lawyer to talk about a separation on the morning of the attack. So we're piecing together what has happened. But I want to bring in right now Christine Grillo, a former prosecutor who has experience in domestic violence cases. This is a horrific one, really, really horrific one. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, it is horrific, but unfortunately, it's not such an unknown tale, if you would. In the situation, what runs very familiar to me is how you ended your summary of the situation when you said that the victim had taken steps to end the marriage. So she had begun to show some empowerment. And in doing that, it set him off for his final act because, no, you won't leave me. I won't let it happen. You won't control, because in these situations of domestic violence, the abuser has to have that power and control. Once the victim starts to demonstrate that they won't be controlled, that's when the abuser really, really acts out. And in these cases, I've said this before exactly on this podcast too, these domestic violence cases, they don't graduate to this horrific act. They don't start to first yell and then maybe slap and then do perhaps what happens in the movies. No, they don't. They go from just the, like you said, verbal abuse, right to the ultimate, if they could, once they feel they're losing control. So it is a horrific one at that. It's going to be the same old with, if this does go to trial, what the defenses will be, and how to combat them. We can comment on that as well.
Hey there, everybody. I want to take a minute to thank Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring today's Law&Crime YouTube takeover. If you've seen our videos, you know Morgan & Morgan is a proud sponsor of Law&Crime, and that our content proves the world isn't always the safest place. And that includes when you get hurt. That can be confusing. That can be scary. You don't really know where to turn. Well, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, can help. They're the largest injury law firm, by the way, because they win a lot. Verdicts and settlements in the multi-millions. They also make it super easy for their clients because uploading documents, signing contracts, starting your claim, it can all be done on your smartphone. Also, there's zero upfront fee. Yeah, you only pay them if you win. So if you've been injured in an accident, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. You can start a claim in 8 clicks or less without even having to leave your couch. To start your claim, visit forthepeople.com/YouTube takeover. What are the defenses in a case like this when he allegedly confesses to what happened? I mean, who
Sure.
else would have done this? Or is it self-defense?
It's not going to be a
I don't know
whodunit.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a whodunit. It's going to be why and whether or not he can be held accountable for his actions. So as the defense lawyers that I've come in contact with and been myself, it would be that it was a crime of passion. This is just the defense presenting, because believe me, I have the prosecution retort to it. So they would come out and say it's a crime of passion. Crime of passion is a legitimate legal defense that you couldn't tell right from wrong because your mind was so overtaken with your passion, if you would. You can't be held accountable for your actions. Where the prosecution comes in to combat this is to show situations or parts of this scenario where he has consciousness of guilt. He does know right from wrong. Starting, first of all, he tried to burn her body and kill all the evidence. That is the utmost consciousness of guilt. Let me get rid of anything that can bring me to this crime. Secondly, his son tried to call 911, tried to get help, and he stopped him. And in stopping him from calling the police, he knew what he was doing was wrong. So do I think a defense would be successful? No. But then there's more arguments with diminished capacity where they could be found guilty but not responsible and be sent to a psychiatric facility for the rest of their lives. That's happened to me in the past as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I do see that what will happen in the heat of the moment, yes, I did it, and I'm sorry. But then when you realize that you're going to have to spend the rest of your life in jail or worse, I don't know, I'm not sure if this state has the death penalty. Actually, I misspeak because this is attempted murder.
This is
correct.
attempted
She's
murder.
not.
Correct.
She's not deceased.
She's alive. She's alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me amplify that a little bit as well, because, there's one thing to suggest trying to evade law enforcement, trying to evade capture, trying to get rid of the evidence. But another thing, and we talk about it in classic law school example, guy walks home, sees his wife in bed, takes out a gun, shoots them both. That's an immediate reaction, right? I would say if this was just the stabbing, maybe there's something there. But I think what you really hit on the head is not only grabbing the child to prevent from calling 911, but the pouring of the gasoline. That's a second step, right? That's another step you take. You don't do that in the heat of the moment. And we've covered cases before, right? How far does that go? Where you say you're that mental state. It doesn't. I know defense attorneys have said it doesn't have to be immediate. It can be prolonged. It can happen over a period of time. But I don't know about that here.
I always hated that defense. It angered me a lot, because if you are, even in the heat of the moment, you still have the ability, the wherewithal to grab the knife. There's these split seconds, but you still know what you're doing. And think about a stabbing. Shooting is one thing. And we've always made that distinction in domestic violence cases. Shooting is one thing. A stabbing is so incredibly personal, and it takes so much energy that, yes, maybe one stab, but multiple. You clearly knew that you had an end game to your actions. You wanted to kill or inflict such incredible serious physical injury on this person.
The fact that he allegedly came forward, came back to the scene, confessed, does that buy him any goodwill? Does that help him in his defense at all? Depends
who the judge is. Because at this particular point, if I were the judge, you wouldn't be buying me that much goodwill just because you've done something so wrong. And then, that's a him thing. That's the defendant thing, trying to alleviate his guilt. I don't ever, where I would find that they would get some kind of sympathy from a judge or even a prosecutor is, let's say, in the missing children cases or this or that, if they've done something for the betterment of others. So if you're doing something or giving out some information that would help someone else, but you're just giving out this information, you're just alleviating your guilt. That's not helping anybody, because we've got enough evidence to convict you anyway. You saying that you did it, I mean, clearly she's alive. She's going to turn around and say, he did this to me. We have other prior statements of bad acts to the mother, saying that this is what he's done to me in the past. So there's enough evidence. So he's just trying to clear his head.
You raised something else that I want to bring up. I actually covered a sidebar about this recently in the Tiffany Lucas case. This is a young mother accused of gunning down her 2 children. And there's talks about whether a plea deal would be on the table. Now, I would say to you, is that a possibility here with such a horrific crime? And then I'm thinking to myself, you know, there's a lot of reasons why you, as a prosecutor, you wouldn't want to have a trial. Obviously, there's always a risk, you know, about being found not guilty. But I think you want to save people the pain and the heartache of having juries of having to hear this, and having Tessa having to testify about what happened to her. So there are incentives to save a lot of pain and time, and obviously there's a money component. Do you think that this is a case where a plea deal could be on the table, and do you think that would be something that is the correct decision given these circumstances?
As the prosecutor, I would present the plea deal to the victim. It would, in my world, and as the former prosecutor, it's what we did. We would say, these are our options. And you don't have to testify, and let's say he'll do 15 years in jail. Or we can go to trial and try for the max. I don't know what the maximum is in that state. I'm strictly New York prosecution. I don't know what the maximum for the aggravated assault and so forth. I imagine it's probably 20 to 25, could be to life. I'm not sure. But in other words, if we went for the max, if I was using my example, we could get him for 25 to life. We could try and do, if you want to do 15 years without a parole and without early release, guaranteeing he's serving 15 straight up years in jail. You know, you present it to the victim. You see how they weigh it, because it's really up to them. Your job as the prosecutor is to present the evidence, whether whether it's easy or not, or we're running a risk or what have you. That's our job. But it's the victim now who has to decide how they want to proceed and what they can withstand and what's worth it to them. And that's how I really would present it. I would leave it up to them.
Yeah, especially when I believe in Tennessee, you're looking at, with attempted murder, life in prison. You know what one of the most heartbreaking one of the most heartbreaking things about this whole case is, Christine? That according to Tessa's mom, Tina, when she spoke to WSMV, apparently Tessa said, he promised me he would never do that, and then do this in front of the boys. So that aspect of it, this crime is horrific. But the idea of doing it in front of children is another component that I'm sure you see in a lot of the cases that you've covered.
You know, you do, and it's amazing to me, because you always have to remember too, and I've said this in the past, domestic violence cases are so hard. Also, you know, you're not 100% certain that she's not going to remain interested in prosecuting him. There's a chance, you know, that now she's going to come out paralyzed, and this has happened in the past where the injuries, women go back. They go back, because you have to remember these relationships began on love. They had children together. She'll now start to think about what her situation is going to be like, raising these kids alone with her injuries and so forth and so on. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I am saying that in my experience in the past, I've had to proceed with cases without the victim's cooperation, that they no longer want to prosecute. They no longer want to see the father of their children rot in jail. They just don't. They wanted to make it better. He may convince them, like you said, where he said he would never do this. And he may say it again. I'll never do it again. I realize that you never know what's going to happen. Swift prosecution would be the best move in this particular case, because like I said, she could waver. She could go back and say, you know what, the father of my kids, I need him. I need him.
My gosh, tough case, tough circumstances, a lot of different factors involved in it. We're sending our best wishes to her and her family, which is, again, a long road to recovery for Tessa. And we're going to put up that GoFundMe page as well if people are interested in helping support her during this time. But Christine Grillo, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it, especially on such a tough case like this.
Sure.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.